Alrighty. Welcome in. This is Fantasy Football Pod for the SGS League. My name is Jordan. I will be your host. Doing a little bit of a different thing today. We're going live on YouTube now. So if you'd like to live tune in while I'm doing this, you go ahead and go for it. Definitely want to see if I can gain a little bit more of an audience on this. But anyways, as we're going, I do want to say first off, what a weekend it was. Did my first fantasy football draft this weekend, and it was amazing. I had a great time down in Ho Chi Town, so it was great getting to see everyone. It was a very fun weekend. I had a feeling that there's going to be a lot of fucked up people there, and what do you know? There was. First day was pretty rough. Second day wasn't as bad, but we power through. Anyways, as I look through, so we're going to kind of do a draft recap. And then we'll look at a few other things today too, but I'll probably do the matchups next week. It'll just be more ideal to do it probably next week. And maybe figure out what's going on with the QBs and not having such low points right now. I don't know what's going on with that. I've never seen that in the league before, but hopefully that will get fixed. But anyways, so looking at our draft, obviously the first round was already very interesting. Right off rip, first pick was Tyreek Hill, Carson took. And then we had McCaffrey go second, CD third, Breece Hall 4, Amon-Ra 5, Jamar Chase 6, Bijan 7, Taylor 8, Jefferson 9, Derrick Henry 10, A.J. Brown 11, Saquon 12, Garrett Wilson 13, and Kyren Williams 14. So right off the bat, a lot of running backs getting taken in the first round. Just a little bit of a mixture of running backs, wide receivers. I will say that McCaffrey not going number one was a little rare. We don't really see that often, but Tyreek Hill is a very solid number one option, I feel like. And then obviously with CD going 3, I would say that if anyone dropped the most, it was Jefferson, but considerably so. I feel like Jefferson has been dropping in a lot of drafts this year just because of who he has at QB, which he has proved himself to play very well, even with a QB that isn't as good. But him dropping down to 9 was definitely, we've seen that a lot. Derrick Henry going a little high this year. Burt's really high on him, so understandably so. He's in one of the best offenses he ever been in his career, so understandably so. That's why he went so high. But Derrick Henry very high in this draft for sure. And then Kyren Williams went a little bit high too. Kyren Williams can kind of go into like the second round in some drafts, but great pick for Tuck. I was a big fan of Kyren Williams. I was hoping he would be available for the second round, but unfortunately not. So, but yeah, I really am liking this first round draft for sure. Very interesting. A couple interesting picks in there for sure, but overall, I think it's all looking pretty well. I mean, these are some of the majority of these guys are going round 1. So now we go into round 2. Round 2 starts off with Pacheco. So Pacheco goes. Then Marvin Harrison Jr. is next. Marvin Harrison Jr. went a little high, but he has got a lot of upside, obviously, so he could have a great year with the Arizona Cardinals. Definitely probably going to be number one option. Then you got Chris Olave. Chris Olave, very high on him this year, too. He should be number 1 in New Orleans. He's got Derek Carr passing to him. Derek Carr, veteran QB, very injury prone, so we could see a little bit of Spencer Rattler this year, which that would be interesting to see how he fares. Preseason wise, he did good his first game. Second game, he was kind of struggling a little bit, but anyways, we got Devon Achane up next. Devon Achane, very high on him this year, looking like that he might take a bigger role and kind of get Raheem Mostert a little bit out of the picture. I do still think Mostert's going to be a big part of this offense, but he is coming into his he's turning 32 this year. He is getting up there in age. But Mostert led the league in touchdowns last season with running backs, so I do expect him to still be a goal line back, to still get his TDs. Devon Achane will probably do the bulk of. I think Devon Achane, I don't know if it's going to be a committee. Devon Achane should at least have some pretty decent numbers in some of these games, but I don't really think the committee's going to bother Devon Achane too much. He's got a lot of upside. Jahmyr Gibbs. So Jahmyr Gibbs obviously dealing with an injury. We don't really still know the extent of it, I believe, but he should be good to go, I think, week 1. And obviously they're expecting him to have a jump up from last season and him start taking a little bit of a bulk of the carries for the Lions. But you do still have David Montgomery there, so this is still going to be somewhat of a committee. We'll see how they kind of use both of them this year in the offense, but they are the second projected offense this year according to Vegas, and I do believe that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have a monster year, so that was a great pickup for Burt right there. Travis Etienne going 6 in the second round. Travis Etienne definitely is probably still going to be what he does. Travis Etienne's a solidified good running back in this league. I was saying in a couple of my pods before that Tank Bigsby might have a little bit of a bigger role, but I don't think that's really going to play much of a part thinking about it. Travis Etienne should still lead this backfield. He should still be the goal line back. So Etienne should have another solid year. Puka Nacua going 7. Puka, after his breakout year last year being one of the surprises of fantasy football, he is now looking like he is the number 1 option for the Rams. Definitely going high in drafts. He went higher in our draft. I think as long as Matthew Stafford is healthy, he should play very well on this team. He should put up good numbers. Now Stafford, with his health concerns and everything, that's always an issue. I think he's dealing with some hamstring tightness right now, but Sean McVay already came out and said that he'll be good to go for week 1. So, but yes, Puka definitely. I'm seeing some people saying that he's way overrated this year. I don't necessarily agree with that whatsoever. I think Puka's going to have a monster year. He's in a really good offense. Puka should fare very well. Nico Collins up next. So Nico went 8. Nico, I think, is going to be very, I would say, he's going to have a lot of other wide receivers in that room now with Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs. Nico, obviously, he's going before all the other wide receivers with the Texans this year just because I think he will be the number 1 option. But it really is hard to tell to see who's going to be number 1 in this offense with how many wide receivers they have. We don't really know how C.J. Stroud and the Texan offense is going to really kind of spread this out. So this will be very interesting to watch, but I would think that Nico Collins is probably the safest bet just because of the year he had last year. And next up, we got James Cook. James Cook going number 9. Might have been a little high for my standards, but the reason why I picked him was just because of the fact that there isn't really any other running backs on the board that I felt more confident in, especially with an offense that's top 5 projected this year. I think James Cook is going to have a great year. There's not really a lot of people in other draft leagues and stuff as high as him, but I'm very high on him this year. I think he's going to have a really good year. The only other running back that I may have considered taking was probably Josh Jacobs. So I wanted to get a running back in the second round. And Josh Jacobs is really the only one I was really thinking about getting. But just because he's in a high-powered offense, and I think that he doesn't really have a committee. James Cook shouldn't have a committee either, but yeah, that one was a really tough one for me, but I just went ahead and went with James Cook. I believe in this offense. I think that they're going to still excel, even though they don't have as many wide receiver targets anymore. So, and then you got Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon going 10. New place. He's in Houston now. I think Joe Mixon will definitely have a big role in this offense. Don't really think there's going to be much of a committee. I mean, you still do have Dameon Pierce there, but I don't think he's really going to affect his stock that much, so I wouldn't really worry too much about it. Michael Pittman going 11. I will say Michael Pittman going this high is, I don't know. This pick I was a little I don't really know how I felt about this pick, honestly. Now, very, very high on AR this year. I think AR is going to have a great year. I don't really know if Michael Pittman was worth taking this high, in my opinion, but I do see why he was taken. He's got a lot of upside. Sorry, just got a question here. Got a little trade question if you don't mind. Got offered Malik Neighbors for K9. What you think? I think you definitely take. Well, it depends on your league, but I think I would definitely take Malik Neighbors over K9. Malik Neighbors, I think you're getting a number one wide receiver right there. Yes, they're not really in a great offense, but he's been looking really good in training camp. He's definitely, I think, for sure, I would definitely take that trade, no doubt. And if you have another QB, I don't know how your league's looking. I don't know if it's 12, if it's 14 team, if it's 10. But if it's like, say, a 10-league team, you got all the QBs in the world to choose from, I would definitely take that trade all day. Yeah, I would definitely go ahead and get Malik Neighbors. I feel like that's a steal for sure. Now, going back to this, next up we have Rachaad White. Rachaad White looking like he might have a bigger role in this offense this year. Definitely going to be the main back in Tampa Bay. I think that he's definitely – I think he might have went a little high in my opinion too. But, I mean, just because of the amount of running backs that all got picked up so fast, I think that's just the reason why a lot of these players went higher than you would see like on Underdog and Sleeper and all those other ones, because Rachaad White's going like round 4 or 5 in some of these drafts, even 6 in some of these other drafts I've seen, which granted 12-team PPRs, it's a little bit different. This is 14-team, but still a lot of these players going very high in these ESPN drafts. So, but I am a believer in Rachaad White. I think he will definitely have a big role in this offense, and I think Baker will have another big year. So, full PPR 12, and my wide receiver and running backs look like. So you got JT, Gibbs. Man, that's a great combo to have. K9, Chase, Brown. Wow. And then Rashid, Pickens, Godwin, Deontay, Palmer. Yeah, you're pretty deep on the wide receivers, man. Big time deep. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't hurt to have Malik Neighbors, but if I were you, I would definitely like maybe shop like 2 of your wide receivers and go and see if you can get another solid running back for sure. Yeah, I would definitely maybe offer like Pickens and Deontay Johnson for like a number one running back on a team for sure, to someone. That's what I would personally do. Maybe you could go get someone like, for example, you could go get like James Cook. You could go get Josh Jacobs, just so you have another running back just in case Jonathan Taylor or Gibbs go out that you can trust in. Because Gus Edwards, I wouldn't really trust too much personally yet, just because we don't really know how that backfield's going to be with the Chargers. But yeah, if I were you, with all the wide receivers you got, I would for sure try to go get another running back, just so you have 3 big-time solid running backs. But JT and Gibbs, man, that's a great combo to have. And then you have Chase and Brown. That's huge. Yeah. I'm looking to get like Cook, Connor Mixon, but it's looking tough. Yeah, I mean, overall, I think you should. I would just definitely keep offering trades to people. I think you definitely can get someone, because someone will need wide receivers, I'm sure. You can give Pickens and Deontay. I would give Pickens and Deontay up. Maybe even Godwin if you want to get rid of Godwin. But you could also do this during the season too and see if, say, Josh Palmer pops off. He looks like he's becoming number one with the Chargers. You can maybe sell him for a better price. Maybe Pickens has a breakout year. We'll see. We just don't know the QB situation with the Steelers. But yeah, I would definitely give it a try. I would keep trying for sure. And just get you another solid running back in that group. All right, I'm going to go back to this now. For sure, man. Appreciate the sub and the like. Thank you, man. Thank you for popping by. Now we got Alvin Kamara up next. Alvin Kamara, so this is going to be a very interesting year for him. He's getting up there in age. Doesn't really look like he's going to have any committee. Doesn't look like Jamal Williams is going to be a part of this offense hardly at all. Keandre Miller has been close to being released by the Saints. So, I mean, Alvin Kamara should have a big bulk in this offense. Obviously, he is just a reception monster. So, in full PPR leagues, Alvin Kamara is such a huge asset. But would I take him over some of these other running backs that went earlier? Not necessarily. I think I'd have Josh Jacobs over Kamara personally because I don't even think Kamara's going to have a great year. He just didn't really get a lot of good rushing yards last year either. I mean, he's just one of those guys where he just gets a lot of receptions. They love passing to running backs in this offense. So he'll definitely be worth it in a full PPR league for sure, which is what our league is. It's half reception PPR, so that kind of hurts Alvin Kamara's stock just a little bit, not much, but I think Alvin Kamara is still a solid running back. But there are a few running backs that went in these later rounds that I probably would have taken over him personally. So Deebo Samuel up next. So Deebo, this is going to be very interesting. I'm about to turn my fan on real quick. But Deebo, man, he could have a monster year. And really with Deebo, I feel like the reason he went so high is just because of the fact that the Brandon Ayuk situation's just been all sorts of messed up. I mean, there's still no deal done. There should be a deal done soon. But Deebo right now, he's looking like he's going to be number one offensively on this team, wide receiver-wise, even if Ayuk does come back. But Deebo, if he comes in fully healthy this season, doesn't have any injuries, no setbacks, anything like that, he could have a monster year. So a reason why he's going high. Definitely a big fan of Deebo, so a great pick for Carson. Carson's team, I will say out of all the teams, Carson's team, I think he really drafted well this year. I do like his team a lot. Kenneth Walker up next. So Kenneth Walker, so now we're into round 3. We got Kenneth Walker went first. I would say that Kenneth Walker does have a lot of upside for sure. They got a new offensive coordinator. Offensive coordinator's Ketterman now saying that he really believes in Kenneth Walker. He's going to get him heavily involved in this offense. But you do still have Zach Charbonnet just kind of creeping up in the corner, just basically waiting for his turn to be number one with the Seahawks, which is somewhat concerning, but I think Kenneth Walker, he's still the more talented back. And I think that he will still have a good year. But, yeah, I do believe in Kenneth Walker still. Obviously, Zach Charbonnet just kind of worries me just a little bit, but doesn't worry me enough to not draft him, in one of these earlier rounds. So, and then we got Mike Evans up next. Mike Evans looking like he's going to be number one with Tampa Bay for sure. Baker Mayfield coming off one of his bigger years last year, and Mike Evans was a big part of that. He's his favorite target. And yes, Mike Evans is getting up there in age, but it's different with wide receivers when they get up in age compared to running backs, because at least with wide receivers, even when they get into their 30s, they can still be absolute monsters. Just look at Devontae Adams last year. Looking at other running backs, or not running backs, but wide receivers in the past. I think Mike Evans will probably have another big year. Just all depends on if this Buccaneers offense is as good as they were last year. Now, if they take a dip, that means Mike Evans is going to take a dip, and that's very concerning. So, hopefully that doesn't happen. I do still think the Buccaneers will have a solid offense this year. Josh Jacobs up next. So, Josh Jacobs in the third round, third pick. Josh Jacobs could have a big role in this offense, and it doesn't look like I think it's Marshawn Lloyd or something like that is going to be. He's been having injury problems all of training camp, so it's looking like Josh Jacobs is going to have full control of this backfield. Yes, you do still have A.J. Dillon there, but A.J. Dillon I'm not really too concerned about. I think Josh Jacobs on a really good offense. This is going to be the best offense he's ever been on in his career. He could have a breakout year, and I do kind of have like some regrets in my mind of not taking him in the second, but I do think he will have a great year. Big pickup for Andy right there. I think he'll definitely be one of your best running backs. And then you got Brandon Ayuk up next. Obviously, Brandon Ayuk, whatever team he's on, he will most likely be number one, other than maybe the 49ers, because Debo and him are kind of equal. But breakout year last year, him just being basically a diva right now, trying to get his contract situation all figured out. We're not really too sure what's going to happen with that yet, but obviously you still got to take Ayuk regardless. This should get all figured out pretty soon, and then Ayuk should end up having a big year. But I would expect him to be back on the 49ers, and if he's back on the 49ers, he probably would have went earlier in this draft, if I'm being honest. But just because of the whole situation he's having, I think he would have definitely been a second-round pick if he didn't have all this going on. So Davante Adams up next. So with Davante is definitely one of those guys that has been around the league for a while, has been a number one wide receiver for a while on any team, such as Green Bay. I mean, he definitely has his on and off years, and if you look, Davante is he's ranked 11th position-wise, looking like he's going to have 189.2 points this year. You look at his game logs from last year, he had a couple huge games. He had 31, he had 35, and then you see there's so many single-digit games he had too. So he's a little bit inconsistent off the board, but this is what you look for is when he has these monster games like this, and that will help you win some weeks. And so also Gardner Minshew is now the starting QB. Gardner Minshew loves slinging the ball, so I definitely am thinking that Davante Adams will still have a very great year. Obviously, Jacoby Myers is there too, but I don't think Jacoby's going to obviously take control. I think it's all Davante right now. So then next up we have Drake London. Drake London, someone I drafted, very big on him this year. I think he'll definitely be number one in Atlanta. Now he's got Kirk Cousins coming. He's projected to have a big year. I think he should break out. This was his stats last year with a shitty QB. It was Desmond Ridder. It was Taylor Heineke. I mean, you just didn't know who his QB was going to be every week. You look at these, he didn't have as big of breakout games compared to Davante Adams or anything like that. He did have a 24-point week in Week 14, but as you could see, at 15, 10, 12, 17, as long as he's getting into those double digits, I'm happy, and I think that he will. I think he'll have a lot more breakout games like this year with Kirk Cousins passing to him. So very high on him. I do think he will have a breakout year for sure. Then you got DK Metcalf up here next. DK definitely coming off a pretty decent year in 2023. Did not mean to click that. But DK, looking at his stats from last year, he definitely had he had one big, huge breakout game of 34 with 3 TDs against Dallas, of all teams. But of all that, he will be number one in Seattle coming forward. Definitely like his value. I think he will be a solid wide receiver. He's been a solid wide receiver since he's came in the league. So then you got Travis Kelce. So first tight end off the board was Travis, which a lot of leagues it's Laporta, but Travis went first. Travis last year, we look at his stats. He had a couple down games. He did have a breakout game with 29.9 against the Chargers, where he had 12 receptions for 179 yards. He had a pretty good start to the year. His end of the year was a little bit concerning. He ended the last 3 games with 5, 6, and 3. And then he did have a couple solid outings, 11, 12, 10, 11. So as long as you're getting double digits with your tight ends, you're very happy with that. And Travis, he's getting up there in age, but obviously Mahomes and him have still that great connection, and he should have another great year. As long as he's in the league, I think he's still going to be one of the top tight ends in the league regardless. So, but is there a chance he could take a dip this year? Maybe. Then we got James Conner up next. James Conner, looking like he's definitely going to be number one. Really what brought his stock up was how he performed at the end of the year. At the end of the year, he kind of popped off. He had 22, 16, 19, 25, and 28, averaging pretty big, substantial yards per carry with 5.6, 4.9. He did have 3.8 that game, but then he had 6.1, and then he was getting the fours in some of these games, 7.7 in this one. James Conner, definitely a great pickup. He should be number one with the Cardinals. And then you got Trey Benson just kind of hiding in the corner as well, waiting for his turn, being the rookie. We'll see if he's going to probably be involved in this offense in the later games of the season. But overall, great pick. Cooper Kupp up next. Cooper Kupp going 10 in the third. Really kind of interested to see how his year goes. He's getting up there in age. Puka Nacua is kind of becoming the number one guy. He did have a couple good games. I mean, he dropped 20 in 3 games. He had 24 in Week 6, 21, 14, Washington in Week 15. Obviously, injuries are a concern for him, but as long as he's healthy, he should still be a big part of this offense. And Cooper, we've seen how much he can dominate in some seasons in fantasy, so we'll see if he has a breakout year. Then you got DJ Moore up next. DJ Moore looking like he's probably going to be number one for the Bears after having a breakout season last year. Had a couple huge games. He had that 45-point outing in Week 5, and then he had 23. He's had 19, 16, 23, 26. So definitely is looking like he's going to have a pretty big year. He's got a new QB. He's got Caleb Williams, who's got a lot of upside coming in. Yeah, I'm a big fan of DJ Moore this year. So DJ Moore, he got paid as well. He's got a big contract now, so he's one of the top 10 highest paid wide receivers in the league right now. So you got Stephon Diggs up next. Stephon Diggs, now in Houston, obviously was a huge part of the Bills' offense for those few years he was there. It's very interesting to see how he'll fit in with this offense. He is going before Tank Dell. I think Tank Dell overall is a more valuable pick, getting him like in the later rounds personally. But still, you got to take Stephon Diggs if you can, if he's on the board at a good value. And I think third round getting Stephon Diggs is pretty valuable. He's definitely looking like last year he had a couple good games. He had 33, 20, 19.6, 21.2 his first week. We'll see how he fits in with this offense. I'm very interested to see how good the Texans are going to be this year. You got Josh Allen up next. Josh Allen was the first QB taken off the board in the third round. Obviously he had a huge year last year. Just look at these numbers. They're absurd. He's just a fantasy football monster. And, obviously they're thinking that he might take a dip this year just because of the offensive weapons he has in hand. No more Stephon Diggs, no more Gabe Davis. He's still got Kincaid, though. He still has Khalil Shakir, who could have a breakout year. We'll see. We don't know who's going to be number one with the Bills yet. Doesn't really... it could be Keon Coleman. It could be Shakir. It could be Curtis Samuel. We really don't know. But we do expect Josh Allen to still put up absurd fantasy numbers and be a top 5, top 3 QB in fantasy this year, no doubt. But if he does take a little bit of a dip this year just because of his offensive weapons, I wouldn't be surprised. Devontae Smith up next. Devontae, obviously, he's been a wide receiver too for the Eagles since A.J. Brown's been there. But he's still going to be putting up his 1,000-yard seasons. As you look at his games last year, he had a couple pretty decent games. He had 3 games over 20 points. As you could tell, he definitely is looking like that. He's definitely a wide receiver too, no doubt. I'm not really too concerned with his value, with getting him in the third round whatsoever, especially the last pick in the third round. He should have a great year. We'll see how all that goes. All right, we're getting into round 4 now. Round 4, we got Mahomes going first. Obviously, I took Mahomes last year pretty early. I was really a believer in Mahomes last year, but he did put up some good numbers, but he was 8th, I think, in QBs last year, just because he didn't have as many offensive weapons. But now that he's got a little bit of a bigger he's got definitely a lot more options on the table for wide receivers. Obviously, Hollywood Brown got hurt. We'll see how long he's going to be out. It could be 5 to 6 weeks. We really don't know that extent. Rashee Rice with this whole court case, we'll see if he gets suspended mid-season. But I think Mahomes definitely second off the board has been kind of happening in a lot of drafts this year, so understandably so. Mark Andrews going second in round 4. Mark Andrews, second tight end off the board. Very high in Mark Andrews if he stays healthy. Obviously, he had an unfortunate injury happen to him last year. It was pretty ugly. As you look at his numbers, he had 2 games where he went over 20 points. But I will say, as long as he's healthy, he is a top tight end in this league, easily top 5. Very sure that Laporta was going to go earlier, but he didn't. But nope, Mark Andrews went ahead and went. Ramondre Stevenson up next. Ramondre, obviously he's going to be on a very concerning offense with the Patriots. I'm not really looking forward to our season. But at least we got a new coach. We got a new QB. We'll kind of see how he gets involved in this offense. And really, the one concerning factor with Ramondre is he going to be getting a lot of his pass-catching abilities taken from Antonio Gibson because Antonio Gibson's obviously on this team now, and he's a pass catcher. So that's a little bit of a concern, but overall he should still be number 1 on this team. And if I look at some of the other running backs taken after him, I probably would have taken him for sure. Yeah, looking at some of these running backs. But yeah, I think Stevenson, he should be all right. Calvin Ridley going 4th. Looking like he's probably going to be the number 1 option. I don't think DeAndre Hopkins is going to start the year healthy. I think he'll be out the first couple games. But you look at Calvin Ridley's numbers, he's a boomer bust type of guy. He always has been. And he has taken a little bit of a dip on the QB, obviously. No more Trevor Lawrence. He is now with Will Levis. So we'll kind of see how that factors in. But they paid him a lot of money. He should be a big part of this offense. And then we had Malik Neighbors go round 4, pick 5. Malik definitely looking like he's going to be one of the top rookies this year. Definitely going to be number 1 with the Giants, no doubt. I think that obviously Daniel Jones at QB, he should have a good year. I don't really see any other wide receivers really being – I just don't see any other wide receivers having a breakout year for this team at all other than him. So, but this offense will be interesting to watch. I really don't think they'll be a top – they might be a bottom 16 offense this year, no doubt. Maybe bottom 10. I don't really see a lot of upside with their offense, but Malik Neighbors, I think, will be taking a bulk of the role at wide receiver for this team, so definitely worth drafting. I think it's a pretty good pick for him in round 4. And then you got Jalen Waddle up next. Jalen Waddle, one of those, I feel like he's another one of those boomer bust type of guys. He had 2 games over 20 points last year. And then other than that, I mean, he had a 15, he had a 14, a 12. Obviously, Tyreek Hill's number 1 in this offense for sure. But I do believe in Jalen Waddle still. He is, I think, another top 10 paid wide receiver right now. They paid their wide receivers in Miami, but yeah, I'm not really too concerned about Jalen Waddle. I think he'll still have a very solid year. You got T. Higgins up next. T. Higgins going pick 7 in round 4. Coming off coming off somewhat of a down year. He was injured. He missed 4. He missed 5 games last year. He is healthy coming into this season, which is a plus. He had 3 games over 20 points. He had 24.9, 20, and 22.5. Definitely a guy that could have a really good year as long as he stays healthy. And then we have the whole Ja'Marr Chase situation with his contract right now too. So hopefully he'll be available this season because that's one of my guys. Hopefully they'll get a deal done before the season starts. If not, then there's a chance he might do a little lockout situation for his contract. So, and then you got Jalen Hurts. He was the next QB taken off the board. Obviously so. I mean, he had a big year last year. He was second. A lot of big games. His rushing ability is obviously the reason he is such a big fantasy guy. And I don't see Philly's offense taking any downturn whatsoever. I think he'll definitely do good. Just with Burrow and T being healthy, do you see him top 15 possible? I think this is like kind of a revenge year for the Bengals. You see Joe Burrow going out with that new haircut and everything, and after the season they had last year, unfortunately, with Burrow going out so early, that really hurt both of the wide receivers' values in a way. But yeah, I think this is going to be a revenge year. T. Higgins definitely has that potential to be top 15 this year. I think both of them are definitely, him and Chase both will be having, I think they'll both put up some pretty good numbers this year as long as they stay healthy. As long as Joe Burrow stays healthy, they'll definitely be a scary team, no doubt. Yeah, I think a wide receiver 2 Bengals should go off, especially having Joe Burrow pass to him. So, yeah, this is going to be one of those years I would not be concerned whatsoever. T. Higgins should have a pretty good year as well. So then next up we got so I picked up Sam Laporta, round 4, pick 9. A lot of value. I feel like I got a lot of value in this pick, him going so low in this draft. Was very shocked, honestly. I was thinking he was probably going to be a round 3 pick for sure. Some drafts have him going round 2 just because of his value. He put up one of the best rookie tight end seasons last year. He put up almost 200 points. His TD monster. He had 2 games over 20 points, and then he had 18, 18, 15. He had 2 3-point games. But yeah, other than that, I thought I'm getting a lot of value with Sam Laporta right here in round 4. So I was like, I might as well just take a top tight end in round 4. I thought that was like very valuable, so I went ahead and did it. Then you got AR going up next. AR, a lot of hype going around him this year. Obviously, just because of his dual threat possibilities. Yes, he did go out. He did get hurt last year, and he hardly played at all. But those first 3 games, 25, 18, 33, he was looking like he was going to have a pretty good year. And so that's why a lot of people are high on him. He's got a lot of potential for sure. AR should be a top QB hopefully in this season. But obviously there's risk taking him this high just because, we haven't seen a full season with him yet. And hopefully he can stay healthy, but you gotta take this guy just because of his potential. David Montgomery up next. So David Montgomery, arguably so, you got to take someone who's going to be in such a high-powered offense like this. But he isn't in a committee. He did have a really good year last year. He did end up scoring 199 points for this offense. He had that breakout game where he had 33. He had 19, 17, 16, 15. But as you can tell, towards the end of the year, he had some games where he wasn't getting as many carries. It really just depends with Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm still very high on Jahmyr Gibbs, more than David Montgomery, obviously. But David Montgomery's still a solid pick in case, Jahmyr Gibbs goes down. He's going to have a huge role, and he'll be a RB1 value every week if Jahmyr Gibbs goes down. So, and it's the same with Montgomery goes down, Jahmyr Gibbs' value goes up substantially. So, and then you got Trey McBride up next. Trey McBride, one of those tight ends that's looking like he could have a breakout year. He did have a really good year last year towards the end of the season. Wasn't really involved with this offense to start just because of Zach Ertz, but then he came around and started showing that he could be a top tight end in this league, dropping 20, 17, 18, 15. Definitely one of those guys that I am high on tight end wise. He should have a breakout year, especially if Kyler Murray's fully healthy. You got Tank Dell up next. Tank Dell, very valuable pick, I think, in round 4 right here. He is going like 5th and 6th in some rounds and sleeper and underdog, but definitely looking like he's going to have a pretty good season. Did unfortunately have that broken fibula that had him out for the last, looks like 6 games of the season. 1, 2, 3, 4, yep. But yeah, man, I mean, he had a lot of good breakout games, 24, 26, 23. He did lead the team in targets during that span, too, more than Nico Collins. So, crowded wide receiver room, though. Someone's going to have to take a dip, and unfortunately it's been Tank Dell so far, but we'll see because of Stephon Diggs' upside in the pass and everything, and then Nico Collins looking like he's number 1 with this team, so... and then you got Dalton Kincaid up next. Kincaid, another one of those tight ends I'm very high on this year. It's looking like he's probably going to get a lot of targets this year just because of, obviously, all the trust that Josh Allen has in him more than these new guys coming in. And he's a young – ooh, man. I don't know if y'all heard that. I just popped the fuck out of my back right there. But, yeah, I mean – Kincaid could have one of those breakout tight end years where he could easily be a top 5 tight end. And as you look at his numbers last year, obviously Dawson Knox was a part of this offense too. But those games that I believe Dawson Knox was out, he was popping off. He had some pretty good games. No games over 20, but I do expect him to have a few games over 20 this year with this offense being definitely having a big change compared to last year. So, we'll go into rounds 5 and 6, and then we'll go ahead and quit this draft thing, and then we'll kind of talk about a couple other things, and then we'll hop off of here. It's 2:16, so I'm running out of a little bit of time. I do got to work today, so and so round 5 we got Lamar Jackson going first pick. Lamar Jackson, definitely one of the most dynamic players we've ever seen. Dual threat. He had a huge year last year. He definitely got that MVP season last year. And this offense should flourish even more now with Derrick Henry. So this is going to be very fun to watch. I think it's going to be way harder to defend him now just because of those rushing abilities that Derrick Henry plus Lamar Jackson has. So this is going to be very fun to watch for sure. But yeah, I mean, just look at some of these numbers. He was 4th last year. Definitely a guy very valuable to get in round 5, no doubt. George Kittle up next. So George Kittle did take a dip in overall efficiency last season. He did have that one breakout game where he had 3 TDs. He dropped 26. And then he had some really solid games overall and towards the end of the season. I feel like he was getting more involved towards the end for sure. But yeah, I mean, he's still got a lot of value. He's on the top projected offensive team in the league this year, so definitely always a valuable pick to get, even though he's getting up there in age. C.J. Stroud up next. C.J. looking like he's going to have a better year than last year just because of the fact that he now has Stephon Diggs on this team. He's got Joe Mixon on this team. He's got a weapon arsenal to choose from, so definitely one of the surprises of last year. He really showed up, top rookie QB last year. So, I mean, he had that 51-point game against Tampa Bay where he dropped 5 touchdowns. So, definitely looking like he should have another great year now that his offense has been upgraded. So, then you got Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers going in round 5. Looking like he'll be the top target for the Ravens this year. He did have a couple really good games last year, but he only dropped 20 once. He is a rookie, so we'll see how he plays this year. But I think he's pretty valuable to get in round 5. You got Evan Ingram up next. Evan Ingram, one of the sleeper tight ends, ended up having the second best season last year. Definitely another sleeper tight end that could have another breakout season, especially with no more Calvin Ridley, no more Zay Jones, but they did Brandon Gabe Davis, and then they have this new rookie in Brian Thomas who is looking like a stud. So we'll kind of see how he fits in with this offense with these new guys, and he probably would be one of Trevor Lawrence's favorite targets coming in. I mean, he had 114 receptions last year. That's really what brought his value up a lot. So, and then you got DeAndre Swift up next. I went ahead and took running back. I took him last year too and was disappointed for sure. He had a lot of inconsistencies for sure. But I feel like he should have a pretty good year this year. I do think that he will be heavily involved in this offense. I don't really know how I feel about the committee going on. Hopefully it's not too much of a committee with Roschon Johnson and Khalil Herbert being there. I just hope Swift proves himself the first couple weeks and shows that he can be a top running back in this league. So I went ahead and took the chance. Could I have gotten Amari Cooper? Couldn't I have gotten maybe another really good wide receiver? Yes, but I wanted to get a running back, and that to me was the best running back that I could get off this board. So, and then you got Amari Cooper, who went next after that. Amari Cooper, he was 18 last year. He obviously had that huge 46-point outing against Houston to finish off the year. But other than he had a 21, a 22, so he broke over 20 points 3 times last year. And he is projected 172, expecting for him to have a little bit of a down year this year with the Browns. But Deshaun Watson under center, he kind of flourished a little bit more, it seemed like, with Joe Flacco under center. But we'll see how his year goes. He should still be their number 1 option in Cleveland. Brian Robinson Jr. Brian Robinson, looking like he might be in a committee with Austin Eckler in Washington this year. He should be their lead rusher, though. He had 2 games over 20 points. He had 24.7 and 27.9. But I am interested to see how they do this running back room in Washington. So, well, that'll be interesting to watch. You got Zamir White up next. Zamir White, have a little bit of mixed feelings for sure on him. He should be the number 1 running back going into this year for the Raiders. But we just haven't seen enough of him really to know how he will flourish in this offense. This is how his season ended up. Very consistent overall. But he's looking like he might be a pretty solid pick. We'll see how he fits in. Having that lead back role the whole season. So, and then you got George Pickens up next. George Pickens looking like he'll be the number 1 option for the Steelers. Now, really what's concerning is who are the Steelers going to start at QB this year? We really don't know. So, but George Pickens should be number 1. I mean, obviously the talent is there. He had his, how many games he dropped over 20. He had 20 and 23 and then 33. He did have a couple games where he just didn't really do much, unfortunately. But he definitely is going to be number 1, and he should have a great year, especially with Deontay Johnson out. I'm expecting him to have a few more breakout games this year. Then you got Aaron Jones up next. Aaron Jones going to be the lead back for Minnesota. Obviously, injury concerns with him his whole career. He missed 7 games last year because of injuries, or 6 games last year because of injuries. Now, looking at his numbers, he did finish off the year pretty decent. He did break 100 yards in all 3 of his last games. So he still is valuable, no doubt. He's taking a little bit of a dip on the offense. We don't really know how this Minnesota offense is going to be with Sam Darnold under center, but he'll be the lead back, so we'll see what happens with that. Got Keenan Allen up next. Keenan Allen, obviously one of the top wide receivers last year. He had a lot of breakout games. He had 27, 37, 35, 22. definitely one of those guys that's getting up there in age. He's on a different offense now. We'll see how he fits in with this offense. There's more wide receivers in this room. I'm not really too sure how high I will be on him this year, but his potential is always going to be there. He's still a top wide receiver in my mind. Terry McLaurin. So Terry McLaurin, we already know how he is. He's just one of those guys that he stays consistent throughout the year. He's a boom or bust guy, kind of like Calvin Ridley is. He only had one game last year where he dropped over 20. But now he's got Jaden Daniels passing to him, so there's that upside with a QB that could have a great year. We'll see how he goes. But Najee Harris up next. Najee Harris, looking like he might be the lead back on this team. Obviously, Jaylen Warren's hiding under the shadows. Not really high on Najee Harris this year personally. He did finish the year off strong, but I mean, he only had 2 games over 20 points, and then he had a lot of very disappointing games last year. We really don't know how this offensive line is going to be either. The offensive line, they do have a couple new rookie guys that could help out with this core a little bit, but Najee Harris just one of those risky draft picks. Kyle Pitts, another risky draft pick. We just haven't seen him fully come into his element yet. We'll kind of see how he goes this year. He's got the best QB passing to him now that he's had in his career, so that should definitely boost his stock up a little bit. He could have a breakout year. We'll see. Javonte Williams, Javonte number 1 in Denver. A lot of good talks coming out of training camp for him, but obviously this offense not really looking like it's going to be much. His value to me is kind of low, but he could still have a good year. We'll see. Didn't really have he didn't break 20 in any of his games last year. He got close. He had 19 against Buffalo, but other than that, we'll see. He might be the lead back, but they're talking about maybe having some other backs in this room. So, and then you got Tyjae Spears. Tyjae Spears had a pretty good year last year, granted for being a backup to Derrick Henry. He's definitely got that pass-catching ability. Pretty impressive rookie season for him overall. Obviously, they brought in Tony Pollard, which is someone I have. Tony Pollard, I think, will be the lead back on this team, but Tyjae Spears will definitely cut into that with the committee. We'll kind of see how all that plays out. Brock Purdy's up next. Brock Purdy, 6th in QBs last year. He had a really good year. Obviously, always a great, solid choice to pick for QB just because of his chances of breaking out for sure. He is in the top offense in the league, so... Then you got Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin had a little bit of a down year last year. It's looking like he's going to be in the slot. He's still got some life left in him for sure. He had one game where he dropped over 20 last year, but he had a lot of inconsistent games that he didn't really drop a lot of points whatsoever. So I do still think that the top wide receiver is Mike Evans on this team still, but he'll be number 2. Aaron Rodgers going round 6 pick 13. Now, Aaron Rodgers is one of those guys where it's like, do you expect him to break out this year after this injury at age 40? I do not know. Obviously, Vegas thinks so. Vegas thinks that they'll have a great season offensively. But obviously the chemistry needs to be there, and we'll kind of see how he plays in this offense, leading them. And then you got Christian Kirk. Returning to the depth chart in Jacksonville. Could be looking like he's probably going to be number 1, but is Christian Kirk a number 1 wide receiver on a team, or is he a wide receiver 2? We do not know. And then you got the concerns with Brian Thomas coming in. Maybe Gabe Davis has a pretty big year. We'll see, but Christian Kirk's definitely the first one wide receiver-wise going off the board for Jacksonville. He's got a really good connection with Trevor Lawrence, so I don't think he didn't break any games over 20 last year. So, all right, those are the first 6 rounds. I'll be back in just a second, and then we'll finish this pod off. Alrighty. Let's see. Yeah, I'm going to finish the pod off. Whatever y'all think about this team, let me know. I do like having some other opinions on it, but this is who I got right now. Got Jordan Love as my QB. Got James Cook, DeAndre Swift, Jamar Chase, Drake London, Sam Laporta, Tony Pollard, Courtland Sutton on my bench, Khalil Shakir, Romeo Doubs on my bench. So definitely interested to see how this season goes. I'm going to go ahead and hop off here. Got a little bit of things to do before I go into work today, but hopefully y'all enjoyed this pod. We will be back live tomorrow to get into some more in-depth